Some days don't begin when the alarm goes off. They begin when your heart wakes up heavy. Before any clear thought forms, you already feel it. Something is wrong. Your breath shortens. Your chest feels tight. Nothing bad has happened yet. But your body reacts as if IT's about to face something bigger than IT can handle. He lay there for a few moments, staring at the dark ceiling, trying to understand that weight inside him. The room was silent. Everything seemed normal. And still, there was an inner alert he couldn't ignore. There was no clear reason, only the strong sense that this day would not be like the others. When he finally got up, every step felt heavier than usual. He moved slowly toward the window, as if looking outside could confirm what his heart already feared. He held the curtain for a moment and hesitated. Because sometimes fear is not about what will happen, but about what we will see when we decide to face reality. When he pulled the curtain aside, there was no space for interpretation. The enemy was there, not scattered, not distant, but organized, positioned, surrounding everything, every path blocked. Every exit watched. There were nitrogen monoxide visible gaps. Nitrogen monoxide safe direction. This was not imagination. This was not exaggeration. IT was real. His body responded immediately. His heart started racing. His hands turned cold. His breath lost its rhythm. His mind ran ahead of him, creating defeat before any fight had even begun. When human vision meets something IT cannot control, fear takes over. Fear doesn't need to shout to be believable. IT settles in quietly with authority. IT shows you what is right in front of your eyes and tells you that this is all there is. IT convinces you that there is nitrogen monoxide way out, nitrogen monoxide alternative, nitrogen monoxide future beyond what you can see. The question rose almost without sound. What are we going to do now? That question does not belong only to that morning long ago. IT has been asked in dark bedrooms, in sleepless nights, in waiting rooms, and in homes where no one sees the battle happening inside. Maybe today you are living something similar. There are nitrogen monoxide soldiers outside your house. But pressure surrounds your life, problems that seem to close in from every side, situations that repeat themselves, doors that never seem to open. The more you look, the more fear grows, because human vision by itself does not produce faith. IT produces anxiety. He kept watching, searching for any detail that might offer hope, a flaw, a movement, a sign that escape was still possible. But the more he analyzed what he saw, the clearer his helplessness became. There was no strategy, nitrogen monoxide strength, nitrogen monoxide logic that pointed to victory. That was when he decided to run, not to fight, not to flee, but to look for someone who saw differently. Elisha, the prophet, a man who walked with a peace that felt out of place. While everything around screamed danger, Elisha remained calm. as if he was seeing something nitrogen monoxide one else could see. When he found him, the words came out disordered. It was not only fear. It was confusion, urgency. "My master, we are surrounded. The enemy is everywhere. What are we going to do?" That question carried more than information. It carried the hope that someone would say this was not the end. While the servant spoke with a shaking voice, Elisha remained still. Same siege, same threat, completely different response. This reveals something deep and uncomfortable. Two people can face the same problem and live entirely different realities. The difference is not the size of the battle, but the way it is seen. There is a silent weariness that comes from living only by what you can see. Over time, faith grows tired. Decisions become more rational and less spiritual. The soul starts trusting calculations more than God's direction. Without realizing human vision takes the place of trust. He remembered a time when faith was simpler, not perfect, but alive. There were struggles, there was fear, but there was not this crushing weight inside his chest. He trusted without needing to understand everything. He prayed without demanding immediate answers. He walked believing God was ahead, even when the path was not clear. But that changed slowly. There was nitrogen monoxide sudden break, just a gradual shift. Trust began to mix with control. Faith started to demand guarantees. He began to measure risks, to choose what felt safest. To human eyes, and without noticing, he started depending more on what he saw than on what he believed. Maybe that has happened to you too, not because of rebellion, but because of survival. After disappointments, after long waits, after silences that hurt more than negative answers, you did not stop believing. You just started trusting a little less. The problem is that faith does not function under control. It requires surrender. And when surrender is replaced by self-protection, something breaks inside. Prayer loses depth. The relationship with God becomes functional and distant. The soul grows tired of carrying a faith that never rests. That siege did not begin that morning. It only revealed what had been happening inside for a long time. Fear had been growing quietly, decision after decision made without seeking God. Adjustment after adjustment based only on logic. Small choices that, together, weaken spiritual vision. That is why the impact was so strong. The external siege exposed the internal one. The anxiety that was already there. The insecurity that had been ignored. The doubts that had never been confronted. The problem did not appear suddenly. It became visible. While he looked at the enemy outside, voices rose inside him. Voices that said maybe he had chosen the wrong path. Maybe God was nitrogen monoxide longer with them. Maybe the promise was not as strong as it once seemed. These voices are dangerous because they sound reasonable. They do not shout. They argue. They say it is safer not to hope too much, safer not to trust too deeply. And when you begin to listen to them, your spiritual vision becomes blurred. The servant wanted a quick answer, a plan, a way out. Because when you feel surrounded, all you want is to escape the pain. But God rarely works with urgency. He works with depth. Elisha's silence in that moment was disturbing. There was nitrogen monoxide, no panic. Only a firm calm that felt out of place in such a real threat. And when we are afraid, someone else's calm can feel like carelessness. But Elisha's calm did not come from denial. It came from vision. He saw something the servant could not yet see. He knew something the servant had not yet understood. And that difference changed everything, even though the scene had not changed yet. Maybe today you are also disturbed by the silence of God, by how calm He seems while you are at war inside. You pray, you ask, you wait, and you receive silence. And that silence begins to feel like abandonment. But God's silence is never empty. It is full of intention. Sometimes God is silent because He is preparing you to see something you would not be ready to see yet. He works on the vision before He moves the scene. The siege was still there. Nothing had changed. The threat was real. But something was already moving behind the scenes. Not outside, but inside. God was preparing the heart before revealing the unseen. This is where many give up, right before. The revelation, right before God opens their eyes. Because the siege feels final. The silence feels too long. The wait feels unfair. But if you are still here, it is not by accident. There is something God is about to show you. Something you have not seen yet. Something that will completely change the way you understand fear, faith, and His presence. Stay. Breathe. Do not leave now. Because what comes next is not just an answer. It is a revelation that changes everything. After the first shock, what troubled the servant most was nitrogen monoxide, longer the enemy outside. It was the silence. The siege was still there, clear and threatening, but Elisha did not move. He did not give orders. He did not build strategies. He did not show concern. He simply remained still. And for someone consumed by fear, the absence of action feels like abandonment. The servant watched every move, waiting for any sign of urgency. A tense look, a sharp breath, anything that would confirm that the situation was as serious as it felt. But nothing changed. Elisha seemed to relate to time differently, as if he were not subject to the pressure of danger. That silence began to weigh more than the siege itself, because silence forces us to face what we have been trying to avoid. When God does not speak immediately, we are left alone with our thoughts, our memories, and our deepest fears, and that is uncomfortable. Maybe you know this place well. You pray expecting direction, a clear answer, a word that will fix everything. But what you receive is silence, And as that silence stretches on, your mind starts working against you. Questions begin to rise. Old doubts return. Unresolved frustrations find their voice. Faith is nitrogen monoxide longer tested by pain, but by waiting, because waiting without understanding drains the soul more than struggling does. The servant found himself remembering other difficult moments, times when he had also been afraid, times when he had been forced to trust without knowing how things would end. Some of those stories had turned out well, others had left scars, and now, standing in that siege, all of those memories returned at once. This is how fear operates in silence. It connects the pain of the past to the uncertainty of the present and tries to convince you that the end will be the same. It tells you that you have seen this story before, that you already know how it ends, that waiting is a waste of time. Meanwhile, Elisha remained quiet, not because he ignored the danger, but because he understood something the servant did not yet see. God is not absent when he is silent. Very often, he is preparing something that requires maturity to be received. There is a profound difference between silence and abandonment. Abandonment creates emptiness. God's silence creates depth. It exposes what still rules the heart. It reveals whether our trust is built on quick answers or on a real relationship. The servant longed to hear something that would ease the tension. A simple sentence, a quick promise, anything that would make the fear subside. But God was not interested in temporarily relieving fear. He wanted to heal the way the servant saw. Because a healed vision can sustain the soul even when the answer takes time. A healed vision allows you to keep walking even when the path is unclear. A healed vision teaches you to trust without controlling. Maybe this is exactly where you are right now. Surrounded by situations you cannot control, praying, waiting, and receiving silence. And the question that echoes inside you is not where is God, but how long? The problem is that we learned to measure God's care by the speed of his response. When he answers quickly, we trust. When he delays, we doubt. But mature faith is not built on speed. It is built on the confidence that God sees what we cannot see. The servant began to realize that his distress did not come only from the external siege. It came from the fear that God would not act the way he expected, from the struggle to accept that deliverance might not be immediate, and that realization confronted his faith at a deep level. God rarely teaches us something new without first dismantling us inside. He allows silence to reveal where our trust is still fragile, where our faith is still conditional, where our obedience is still dependent on results. As time passed, the siege remained. Nitrogen monoxide visible change. Nitrogen monoxide outward sign. But something was shifting inside the servant. The anxiety was nitrogen monoxide longer screaming. Fear was still present, but it was losing its power. This is the point where many walk away. When nothing changes on the outside and silence continues. When waiting feels heavier than action. But this is precisely where God does some of his deepest work. The servant did not know it yet, but that silence was not the end of the story. It was the space before revelation. The time necessary for human vision to surrender, so that spiritual vision could be received without resistance. If this moment is speaking to you, do not walk through it alone. This channel exists for daily devotionals like this, for those who are tired, confused, or are hurting, but still seeking God. Stay with us. There is more God wants to show you. Maybe today God is doing the same with you. Not answering the way you want, not in the time you expect, because he is preparing you to see something greater. Something that would not make sense if it were revealed too soon. The silence is still there. The siege has not moved. But the story is far from over. Because when God is silent, he is not still. He is aligning the heart for what is about to be revealed. And what he is about to reveal changes everything. The silence did not end the fear, but it began to expose it. The servant realized that what troubled him most was not the enemy outside, but the tension inside his own heart. The fear of trusting without understanding. The fear of waiting without control. The fear that if God did not act soon, everything would fall apart. Faith is easy when results come quickly. Trust is easy when the path makes sense. But standing there, surrounded and still, the servant was forced to face a deeper question. What if faith was never meant to remove uncertainty, but to teach him how to live inside it? That realization was unsettling, because it meant he could nitrogen monoxide longer hide behind strategies or expectations. It meant he would have to stay present in a moment he did not understand. Elisha, still calm, was not watching the enemy. He was watching the servant. Because God always works first in the place nitrogen monoxide one else can see. He heals vision before he changes circumstances. He shapes the heart before he moves the scene. Sometimes God does not speak because he is waiting for something in us to break, not to harm us, but to free us. As long as human vision controls the moment. Spiritual vision has nitrogen monoxide room to emerge. The servant wanted to ask more questions. He wanted clarity. He wanted explanations. But something held him back, as if he were being invited to be still, to remain, to not run from the discomfort. There is a point in every journey of faith when God leads us to the edge of what we can understand. Not to confuse us, but to teach us that he does not fit inside our logic. That his protection is not limited by what our eyes can see. Then Elisha spoke, not with urgency, not with fear, but with quiet authority. He did not address the enemy. He did not speak about strategy. He did not acknowledge the siege. He turned toward God. The prayer was simple, short, without performance, without explanation. Lord, open his eyes so that he may see. It was not a prayer to change the situation. It was a prayer to change perception. Because Elisha knew that if the servant could see what was already there, fear would lose its power even if the problem remained. This prayer crosses time. It does not belong only to that moment. It reaches us now. Because many times we ask God to change our situation, when what he wants is to change how we see it. In the moment Elisha prayed, nothing changed outside. The siege was still there. The enemy had not moved. No sound from heaven. No dramatic interruption. But something shifted inside. This is how God works. He moves first in the invisible. He heals the inner eye before altering the outer world. Because a change in circumstances without a change in vision will never last. Suddenly, the servant's perception expanded, not just what he saw, but how he understood. He became aware of a reality that had always existed, but had never been recognized. There were chariots of fire, horses of fire, a heavenly army surrounding them. Power, presence, protection. It was not symbolic. It was not imagined. It was real. The enemy was still there, but nitrogen monoxide longer felt dominant. Fear lost its voice. Anxiety lost its authority. Because once spiritual vision opens, what once felt final becomes smaller than God. The servant understood something that would change his life forever. He had never been alone, never unprotected, never abandoned. Heaven had been active the entire time, even when he thought God was silent. This is the moment fear loses its throne. Because fear only rules when you believe you are on your own. When you realize there is more for you than against you, everything shifts. Opening spiritual eyes does not mean denying reality. It means interpreting it correctly. It means understanding that what you see is real. But it is not all that is real. The servant did not leave that place with every answer. The siege still existed. The day still had to be faced. But he left different, steadier, aware, secure, because now he knew that his previous vision had been limited. This is one of the greatest liberations of faith. Realizing that you do not have to control everything to trust God. That you do not have to understand everything to obey. That you do not have to see everything to rest. But revelation is never the end. It is the beginning. Because seeing beyond changes how you respond. And it also changes how you walk after the moment passes. And that next step still needs to be lived. Once the eyes are opened, life does not return to what it was before. The servant was still standing in the same place. The siege was still there. The enemy had not disappeared. But the way he occupied that moment was completely different. The fear that once dominated his thoughts, nitrogen monoxide, longer controlled his heart. It had not vanished, but it had lost its authority. Anxiety was nitrogen monoxide longer in charge of his decisions. Something deeper had taken root. This is where many people get confused about faith. They believe God proves His presence by removing the problem immediately. But most of the time, God proves His faithfulness by transforming the person first. A heart that has been healed can wait without breaking. A vision that has been restored can stand without panic. The servant understood that seeing beyond did not mean pretending the danger wasn't real. It meant recognizing that the danger was not supreme. There was a greater reality at work, one that had always been there. From that moment on, every step would feel different, not because life would suddenly become easy, but because he nitrogen monoxide longer walked as someone who believed he was alone. And that awareness changes everything. Maybe today God is inviting you into this same shift. Not into a loud faith, not into rushed decisions, but into a quiet, deep, steady trust that does not depend on immediate results. Because mature faith is not defined by how quickly God acts. It is defined by how deeply you trust Him while you wait. Seeing beyond is not a single moment. It is a new way of living. It is learning to interpret life through spiritual eyes, not just natural ones. It is stopping the habit of reacting only to what is visible and starting to discern what God is doing in the invisible. The servant left that day different, more attentive, more humble, more dependent. He learned that the greatest danger was never the army outside, but a life limited to what the eyes could see. This lesson crosses generations. Many people still walk with God, but with their eyes closed. They believe, but react as if they are alone. They pray, but live as if everything depends on them. Maybe that has been your story for a while, not because you stopped believing, but because you got tired of hoping too much and being disappointed. God is not condemning you for that. He's inviting you to something deeper. Now comes the practical part. Something simple, but powerful. Something you can do today, without preparation, without performance, without permission from anyone else. When this video ends, do not rush into the next one. Do not fill the silence immediately. Take 2 or 3 minutes. That's all. Find a quiet place. Sit down. Breathe slowly. Let your body settle. And then pray a simple prayer. Not a long one. Not a perfect one. Just an honest one. Lord, open my eyes so that I may see. Do not ask God to fix everything right now. Do not ask for explanations. Ask for vision. Ask for discernment. Ask for a heart that can see beyond the moment. Then, as you go through your day, pay attention to your reactions. Notice when fear tries to take control. Notice when anxiety tries to make decisions for you. In those moments, remember this truth. There is more happening than you can see. Choose to pause instead of panic. Choose to wait instead of rush. Choose to trust instead of control. Because seeing beyond does not just change what you see. IT changes who you are becoming. The siege may not disappear today. The answer may still take time. But if your vision has been healed, you will not be the same person walking through IT. And that makes all the difference. God did not bring you to the end of this devotional by accident. If you are still here, it is because He wanted to remind you of something essential. You have never been alone. Heaven has never been silent. The invisible has always been greater than what scared you. If you want to continue walking through moments like this, with daily devotionals created for those who are tired, searching, and still hungry for God, stay with us. Subscribe to this channel and walk with us day by day. This is not about content. IT is about formation. Continue. Walk forward. Trust Him, even when you do not understand. Because when God opens your eyes, faith finds rest. And those who learn to see beyond are nitrogen monoxide longer held captive by what they see.